Morning, everyone.
Good morning. Looks like we got some more folks joining. That's great.
I think Lee and Jamie are also going to be joining us if they're not on already.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Okay, let me get started with some introductions and what I'm hoping our Agile for Patriots graduates will get from this session. So first, I want to welcome all of you to the first talk for our grads only. I'm honored. There is no better person I would have loved to kick off the session than Anca. Let me tell you a little bit about Anca, why she inspires me and why I had her speak to you and what I'm hoping you'll get out of it. So first, Anca and I worked together for more than 1 year at one of our biggest clients. We tried to help the client scale Scrum to more than 20 teams who were distributed across 3 continents. And as Anca and I tried to help the client, we encountered pretty much all of the challenges that organizations encounter as they try to switch from waterfall thinking to agile thinking. And what inspired me the most about Anca, one was the understanding of the core principles and values, empiricism, Scrum values, agile principles and agile values. Very few people get it in their bones, in their blood, in their DNA, like Anca does. And as you know, if you don't understand the principles and values, then you just become a robot who's mechanically going through the rituals and you will not get agility, right? So that's point number 1. The second most important point is what inspires me about Anca is her ability to speak her truth clearly and quietly, okay, and influence people without having to raise her voice, without having to be aggressive. So there is a way to be assertive while still being kind, compassionate, and persuasive. And that is a skill that we desperately need in high pressure, high conflict situations, where if we don't have that wisdom on the team, then people like me who are severely lacking in those areas can drive the team into a ditch. So what I'm hoping today that you will get, especially the Pathfinders team, is talk to Anca, listen to Anca, ask her questions about real world scenarios where she has been part of teams that have high conflict and teams which are struggling to give feedback and receive feedback, and see what ideas you can steal and take back and experiment immediately after this meeting. So whether you are part of this presentation, whether you're part of Pathfinders, you're not part of Pathfinders, you're watching it live, you're watching the recording, my ask is try to take at least one actionable insight that you can immediately apply, conduct an experiment and learn. All right. So with that, Anca, thank you so much. Welcome. And I'm going to pass the ball to you. Please get started.
Thank you, Ravi, for your kind words. And thank you all for joining and for giving me the opportunity to share with you guys some of the things that I learned throughout my experience about feedback and how feedback can help us correct any broken Scrum value. As you probably saw in my bio, I'm currently the head of delivery working for an UK IT services company. I have 15 years experience. I started as a .NET developer, but my passion for technology and for human psychology led me very close to everything that Scrum and Agile have to offer. If you already used Scrum or if you read about it, you probably know that everything relies on the Scrum values that are creating the foundation, and without that foundation, the empirical process cannot happen. So in today's short session, we will be discussing how effective feedback can help us correct a broken Scrum value. But before we dig into the topic, let's start with a bit of introductions. And I would kindly ask each of you to take 2 minutes and to think about the answers for each of the 3 questions. So what is your best example of receiving feedback? What is your worst example of receiving feedback, and what makes them different? So start by thinking about them for 2 minutes, and then we will go one by one and present our answers and discuss them. Is that okay?
Anca, would you like us to type in the chat window or just think and be ready with our examples?
Just think about your answers or write them down somewhere for you, and then we will discuss them.
Perfect. Thank you.
1 minute left. Okay. Who would like to go first and share with the group your best and worst example of receiving feedback and what makes them different?
I can go first. So I think the best example of receiving feedback, I don't need a lot of sugarcoating. I prefer people to be direct, and so I think my best example of giving feedback is somebody who's able to say, you know, here's the established standards that we've already known. So you knew that the standards were ahead of time. Here's where you met the standards, and here's where we needed to work on the standards. And it was not personal. It was all focused on the problem and what we'd accomplished up to that point, and what needed to be accomplished still. Versus the worst, I have a ton of worst examples of receiving feedback. It's hard to pick one. So I'll say that there are a couple of quick examples. One is the example of the boss that does want to sugarcoat everything, and so it sounds like a compliment when it's not. The second one is when the standard wasn't clear, and so they come back to you and say, hey, you needed to do this or you needed to do that, and you're like, well, that's never been anything we've talked about. And then the third one I would say is just someone who's doesn't appear to have any emotional intelligence, and they just you know, they just run you over, in essence, trying to give you negative feedback without any thoughts about maybe efforts that have been put in or anything else. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I could go. This is Barbara DeVries. I'm in the Agile for Patriots program, and I'll do the easy one first. Some of my best examples have been actually in the Agile for Patriots program. I like to receive feedback one-to-one and to be able to have a conversation with somebody, and those have been very helpful. The worst examples that I have, and there's more than one, but I'm going to tell you that anyway, is from the corporate world. And I'm a very big proponent of W. Edwards Deming, which is basically make performance reviews a thing of the past. But in corporate environments, I've been in highly political performance review situations that were just draconian, and where the feedback that I received was so dumbed down and generic that it was not helpful. And on the other hand, for my team, I had to fight so hard for my team and to write meaningful reviews and then take them into these manager caucuses and fight for my team. And then there was a committee above me that made it into average and then knocked down people's scores. And it was just horrific. And one of the results from one of them, this woman said to me, "Barbara, you wrote the absolute best review I've ever received with the worst score." It was terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Cecile. Barbara, I'm sorry, are you finished?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Oh, okay, all right, sorry. Hi, I'm Cecile Palmer Malcolm, and I'm going to take the first question. What was an example of my best feedback? I think it was firm, kind, but stating the facts, or at least stating what the best practices or the standards are. But firm and kind. Kind is important for me. My worst, shouting. Some persons, I think, they think that when you shout, you get the message across. So shouting when things don't go, well or according to the plan. And what makes them different for me is my ability to hear, because if somebody's shouting, naturally, I put up a defense, and I think that's kind of human nature. So my ability to hear and receive it is much lighter and easier when it is firm and kind. That's it for me.
Thank you.
I'll go next. My name is Ash Gawande, and I'm also a Patriot Pathfinders, currently involved in the program. I think the best example of receiving feedback is, and best and worst, is my mindset. People have conflicts, and there's going to be, disagreements. So the best example of working around that, I think, for me, is when both of us can come to a common goal. So if we can find that common goal that we're trying to achieve, then I think then you change your mindset, and both people can agree to meet on that common goal. And then the worst example, and that has to do with more with my mindset, is automatically I'm like, I don't like this person. Their feedback is terrible. They don't like me, that type of thing. So I think it has to do with a person's mindset. And that's the difference, is I think between the two, is one of them is you're ready to go into the feedback, look at it, and understand that both of you are trying to work on a common goal. And the other one is your mindset is already saying, I don't like that person. So.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. So one of the best examples that I have, and I'll say it probably goes back to my days in uniform in particular, was, understanding what the expected standard was, and knowing that, hey, this is my end goal. And then, of course, being able to walk through and see, hey, this is where you met or exceeded the standard, and this is where you've got some work to do. In the Navy, the evaluation structure is very well defined, and so the actual target, the expectation in the different dimensions that you're going to be evaluated on year, as well as mid-year. So great example, and thoroughly loved it, and even tried to bring that into corporate culture. Now, I had one supervisor who, it was only at the point where it's, hey, by the way, this is your annual review, that regardless of what my input was, I was in no position to actually ever meet the expected standard, because I didn't know what the expected standard was. And as a manager, that's hugely detrimental, because without being able to drive not only my personal result, but be able to convey, hey, as a team, this is what the group standard is. There was no way that I could even remotely hope to put together an expected set of goals for the group, because I didn't even know what I was driving to. So, you know, that was quite a challenge. And of course, the difference between the two is the fact that when you have a well-defined set of standards and goals, you can make a list of all the actions that you want to take in order to achieve them. When it's ambiguous or non-existent, then you're just trying to figure out how to fight the fire of the day rather than actually achieve some end result.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to share?
Hi, this is Charles. I go next. So my best example, this is after I was in a uniform, and I worked directly for the COO. And she would always say, before you give anyone any bad news, you always tell them something good. She was a very kind person. I tried to, take that approach. Try to use that approach myself. But she could deliver very bad news with a smile on her face and make you feel good about the bad news. I believe throughout my life, I've got my best feedback from her. My worst feedback was back when I was in uniform, and one of my commanders, after I completed a mission, I thought I checked the box, did everything the right way, felt pretty good about it. And when I exited my aircraft, he was waiting, and he yelled, and it was pretty kind of a bad, it was kind of a bad image, I guess, of view, because that was one of the first times that I'd ever kind of lost my composure and gotten emotional, especially with a senior ranking person. It ended up being that I was right, and ended up getting praise from higher echelons, because that ended up being a very visible event. And and the other thing is he never came back and said, hey, I'm sorry for how I approached and anything. So that kind of left, our relationship was never good after that, I should say. Obviously, the difference is, it's to me, I'm an emotional person. I'm a passionate person. So it's really about your tone when you're giving me the feedback. Everyone has problems with feedback sometimes, but in these particular situations, it is especially important that your communication skills you're using the proper communication skills, and that your tone and all these other your nonverbals and how you say things will make the difference on whether I'm receiving it or not.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. If you heard what we shared here, you probably noticed that there are a lot of things that we have in common when we are receiving feedback and how we are processing that feedback. But before before analyzing that, let's have a look at what feedback is. So based on its definition, feedback is an information about reactions to a product, a person's performance of a task, which is used as a basis for improvement. So a key element in the feedback is the basis for improvement. So the intent when we are providing feedback is to help someone improve on something. Without that intent, we do not have feedback. So always when we are giving feedback or when we are receiving feedback, we need to look for the improvement. And when giving the feedback, we need to start with the end in mind, what exactly we want to achieve. And we need to structure it in two sections. So we need to have the intent, the why it needs to be improved. and we need to have the content, the reactions, the corrections that are necessary. If one of those two is missing, then we don't have proper feedback. We have only some kind of information sharing that is not really helping anyone. So if you read online about feedback, you will find a lot of information, and you will find a lot of categories, from terminal feedback to positive, to negative, to constructive, to continuous. So there are a lot of types of feedback, but for the purpose of this session, we will be focusing on two of them, on two main ones. So the descriptive feedback would be the first category. And the descriptive feedback refers to specific information in the form of written comments or conversations that is helping the learner understand what he needs to do in order to improve. So we are not only describing the progress toward learning goals, but we are also adding the next steps. The descriptive feedback is, of course, always a lot longer and comprehensive, and it's a lot of the times anecdotal. So this is the type of feedback that we are all looking for. And if you now go back to your examples, you probably noticed that sometimes what was missing when you gave your words feedback example were the next steps, the learning goals, where you want to be. So this is the first category. And the second one, the evaluative feedback, is a summary for the learner of how well he or she has performed on a certain task. So the evaluative feedback is judgmental about learning. It's usually expressed as a grade, a mark, or a symbol. And it's something we are extremely exposed at in school, especially because in school we all get grades, we get marks, we get symbols, but we are not always told what we need to do in order to improve, unfortunately. So the evaluative feedback somehow becomes the norm for us because we are in the system for many years. And when we start to be in a working environment, then we gradually need to understand that we need to slowly move toward the descriptive one. Let's try a small exercise to see the difference between the two types of feedbacks. We have here in this table 4 feedbacks. And I would like you to tell me if they are descriptive or if they are evaluative. So the first one would be try harder next time.
I think that's evaluative.
Yeah.
Exactly. Does that help? If you hear that, try harder next time, does it help you? Not really, because you have no idea what harder means. So you only know that it's not a positive feedback, but that's about it. Next time, you don't know what to expect. The second one, you maintained eye contact throughout your entire speech. Now you might work on your enunciation.
I think that's descriptive.
Descriptive.
Exactly. Does that help? If you hear that, would it help you? Yes.
Yeah, because you're trying to improve somebody's communication skills.
Exactly. So you are telling the person what they did good, so they maintain eye contact, and then you are explaining them what they need to do better in the future. So they need to work on their enunciation. Cool. Next, you don't show respect towards your colleagues.
Evaluative.
Exactly. Is this a good feedback to receive? No, not really. We don't want to hear that. And the fourth one, you made some simple mistakes on your timeline. Make sure that your time intervals are all the same length.
Descriptive.
Exactly. So if you look at these examples, it's quite clear that we should always be aiming for providing descriptive feedback and, of course, for getting descriptive feedback. Evaluative is good in some cases, so I'm not saying that that type of feedback should not be used. but the descriptive feedback is the one that actually can help you grow and improve on something. Why are we providing feedback? Why do we give feedback?
I think it's in order to help the person improve.
Exactly. So we expect change. When we give feedback to someone, we expect change, unless it's praise, like very positive feedback. If it's constructive feedback, we expect something to change. So the Dild's pyramid of logical levels, I don't know if you've been exposed to this before. If not, this is a model of personal change that goes from one level to the other. So in the Dild's pyramid of logical levels, what this pyramid is trying to explain is how change is happening. So when we provide feedback, we expect change, but how change is happening at 6 levels. So the first level is the environment. The environment refers to the surroundings, the people around us, the places we go, our work. So everything that's our environment, everything that's influencing our behaviors. Then we go to the next level. The next level will be the behaviors. That's referring to what we do and what we say. And then on the third level, we have the capabilities. So our skills, we can have instinctive capabilities, so the ones we are born with, and also some learned skills. On the fourth level, we have the values and beliefs. These are our emotionally held views. So what we feel is possible, impossible, necessary, unnecessary. Here is where our motivation is present. And then we go to the fifth level. That's the identity, our self-esteem, our unique value, how we see ourselves. And then we have the purpose, something that's bigger than ourselves, spirituality, how we want to change the world, and all that. So in order for change to happen, it needs to go up in the pyramid. If you want to change something in the upper levels, most likely you need to change something in the lower levels. In order for a change to be sustainable, it needs to go up. Unfortunately, the ease of change goes the other way around. So it's a lot easier to change the environment. It's a lot easier to change the behaviors. It's a bit more difficult to change the capabilities. And it's impossible only by giving feedback to change values and beliefs, identity, or purpose. So if we want to provide feedback, we need to stay ideally on the first 2 levels and maybe also the third one, but try not to reach values and beliefs or identity or purpose. And if you are telling someone you are not respectful, for example, you are hitting on their identity, because I think about myself that I am respectful. So that's my identity. So you can explain to me my behavior that led you to believe that I'm not respectful, but not use my identity to give me feedback, because that never works. That only creates stress and pressure, and it never brings good results. So if for example, it's also if something happens on an upper level, the change will surely go on lower levels, but it's not necessarily true the other way around. So let's imagine we have an agile team that starts to use Post-its and write things on the walls and all that. So the environment looks agile, but if they don't have the values and the beliefs, that's in vain. So that's not enough. But if someone has the values and the beliefs, if they have a good Scrum Master that is promoting the values, that is teaching them about the values, most likely that will affect their environment. So naturally, they will start using the Post-its and information radiators and all that. So if we want to provide feedback to someone, we need to understand all these levels of change, and we need to see exactly where we are working on which level or levels, and how we can influence something on an upper level. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions?
Yep, that makes sense.
Okay, now you probably saw a lot the Scrum values. As you know, we have 5 of them. So we have the first one, the courage. So the Scrum team members have courage to do the right thing and work on tough problems. Can you give me an example of a situation you were in when this value was broken? No examples? I have one. Let's imagine that you have a Scrum team that is working on something, and the product owner in the 3rd day of the sprint is asking the team to stop everything and start focusing on some extra client requests. So if something like that happens, the development team needs to have courage to advise the product owner on the impact of the interruption. So this is a key value. It's also a value that is sometimes broken. The second one is focus. So everyone focuses on the work of the sprint and the goals of the Scrum team. Do you have an example of when such a Scrum value was broken? Nice. You have great teams. So if the teams are working on separate sprint backlog items, so at the end of the sprint, they don't complete anything. So focus means that you stop trying to start and you start trying to finish. The third value, commitment. People personally commit to achieving the goals of the Scrum team. So let's say during retrospectives, for example, when you identify a list of improvements that need to be taken, then you need commitment from the team in order for those improvements to turn into reality. And you also need, for example, commitment from the stakeholders in the sprint review to provide feedback. And you also need commitment towards the sprint goal. So another key Scrum value. The fourth one is respect. So the Scrum team members respect each other to be capable, independent people. Do you have any example when respect was broken?
Well, I think that goes to the value of trusting that that person has the capability to get the job done and not micromanaging that person.
Exactly. So we need to respect our roles and respect our capabilities and respect each other in order to get something done. And I heard an example about a person yelling at another person. So that's definitely doesn't show respect. And it's something that we don't want to be exposed to. Okay, and the last one, openness. So the Scrum team and its stakeholders agree to be open about all the work and the challenges with performing the work. So definition of done is an example of openness, creating the definition of done, exposing the definition of done, a team that's being able to inform a product owner if they feel that a sprint should be canceled because something happened, some business priorities changed and all that. So these are the 5 Scrum values. These, as I have said in the beginning, are the foundation for Scrum. Unfortunately, I saw a lot in my experience that it happens that one or more of these are broken, and it's extremely hard for us to provide feedback when that happens. And it's hard for us because the Scrum values sit up in the Dild's pyramid of logical levels. So how did you, or how would you formulate feedback when a Scrum value was broken? Where would you start? At what level? What would you analyze?
This is Charles. I think you start with the action.
So the behavior.
I guess it would be the behavior.
Exactly. Is behavior influenced by environment?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, I agree
Yes.
with that. If the
What
environment,
about-
if the environment is not set up for success, you create behaviors that those behaviors they discover competencies that are questioned, and it's all like a bad circle.
Exactly. So because the values sit on the deep levels, so the values, identity, purpose, we cannot touch on those. So we need to stick to the first three levels and try to suggest corrections on those, and try to understand that if a person doesn't show respect or focus, that might be caused by something that's happened in the environment that is affecting the behavior, that is affecting the competence, and that will make us believe, and that might also be true, that the value is not there. But that might not always be the case. So every time we want to correct a value that appears to be broken, we need to focus on the first three levels. And as I have said before, the levels are quite linked to each other, and we always need to stay away from the identity. You are not respectful, you are not courageous, you are not open, you are not focused. These are not examples of good feedback. This is feedback that does more harm than good. So it's always try to analyze the environment, the behavior, and draw your conclusions based on those, and try to fix those. And if those will be fixed, then you can, the Scrum values will slowly start to exist, if they are not there.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yes, sure.
So where does, I notice in the few situations where I've actually been on a Scrum team, mainly in a learning environment, time puts a lot of pressure on you. Is that I mean, I know it doesn't fall in any of these factors, but it does influence how you give feedback. So, do you have any insight on how to manage that, or maybe that's later in the presentation?
So let me see if I understood the question. Your question is, where does time sit in this when we don't have time to, the time pressure, because we need to deliver something, and that creates a lot of.
Right. So you have, especially now we're working in a remote environment. We try to stick to schedules. We're on and off Zoom, and Agile. One of the I guess it's not a principle, but obviously sticking with your time box is important. And I noticed that if you're trying to stay in these first three levels, then at least for me, because it's 20 years in the military, yeah, I'm pretty direct. I have to think through what I'm going to say next, and that slows down the process of giving feedback, especially when time is restricting your actions and that kind of thing.
Yes, feedback shouldn't take a lot of time if it is provided spot on. If you wait to provide feedback, then yes, you will need time for it. If you react to something just right after it happened, then things should be a lot simpler. So if you want to, if there is a correction that you would like to make, you don't need to wait and to add. So feedback does not, there is a lot of confusion between what performance management means and feedback. So performance management usually happens, I don't know, monthly or quarterly or once a year, but feedback should happen when something happens, when you notice a behavior, when you notice a broken Scrum value, then you need to provide feedback ideally in the same day. So because the information is fresh for the person and the information is fresh for you, and you can have the conversation, and the conversation would be a lot shorter. If you wait and add, and then the conversations will become a lot longer. It's also a matter of creating the habit. If you don't have the habit to provide feedback, then the first time you will do it, it will take you, I don't know, 1 hour. If you do that, I don't know, weekly, then it will take you a lot less. Have I answered your question? I think you are muted.
Yeah, that's good insight. I guess my next question is, you may be getting to this later on in the presentation, but when you're trying to provide feedback, and the person that you're providing to doesn't seem to be receiving that feedback. But if you're going to get to it later in the presentation, I could wait. Wait till you get
yes.
Okay.
In the next few minutes, we will be talking about some techniques on how we can provide feedback in general, and especially when we are talking about broken Scrum values. So let's start with the first one. If you're like most people, you probably hate delivering negative feedback. That's normal. We all feel that. We don't like to give negative feedback, even if it's in a constructive manner, because we hate the effect that feedback has on people. So we are trying to avoid it and replace it with water cooler gossip and all that, because we are afraid to be in that difficult conversation with the person that is receiving the negative feedback. But based on a study that was recently made, 83% of the people are appreciating feedback. So we don't like to give it, but we do like to receive it. And 94% of the people are saying that they also appreciate negative feedback when it's delivered in a constructive manner. So it's that the negative feedback is not the problem. The problem is how that feedback is delivered. The problem is that we do not know how to stay in the surface levels of the Diehl's pyramid of change, and because of that we do more harm than good when we are delivering the negative feedback. So the next time we won't be doing it, because it will not most likely be a pleasant experience. So there are a lot of techniques for providing feedback. We will be focusing on 3 of them. The first one is the situation, behavior, impact technique. There are 3 main steps in providing feedback. The first step is to put the feedback into context. So you identify the situation. You need to provide the context to the person that is receiving the feedback. Then you describe the behaviors you want to address, what you noticed. So second level of the deals pyramid, the behaviors, the observed behaviors, and then you explain its impact. So you use statements to describe how actions have affected you or how they have affected others. Ideally, when using the situation behavior impact technique, you should be using in the third step I, because you need to make it personal. If you are saying we feel that we felt embarrassed because of, that's a bit more generic. It can also be used, but it has a higher impact if you are talking about yourself, how some behavior made you feel, what you noticed, what you think about a certain situation. So let's take an example. Let's imagine we had a team member that was playing on his phone and didn't pay attention in the sprint review. So one way of giving feedback is to tell the person that at the sprint review today, you were disrespectful, you lacked focus and commitment. So this is not a good feedback, because we are touching on that person's identity. We are calling them disrespectful. We tell them that they lacked focus and commitment. Of course, it's normal for us to draw those conclusions, but it's also important to make sure that when we are sending the message, we don't forget about the fact that we don't want the person to feel offended, but we want the person to improve. So another way of saying that, by using the situation behavior impact technique, is like this. At the sprint review today, while your colleague Alex was presenting, you were playing on your phone and didn't seem to pay attention. So we have the situation at the sprint review, and then we have the behavior, what you have done. And then the impact. I felt embarrassed because we all worked so hard this sprint, and I'm worried this might affect our team morale and reputation. So by using the situation behavior impact, you are providing descriptive feedback. You explain the situation, you explain the behavior and the impact. And if you are using such feedback all the time, most likely in the end, you will see results.
So I have a question on that one. The last paragraph there, I felt embarrassed. Now that's subjective, right? So some people may not feel embarrassed. So why not, would it not be more descriptive if you just said, we all worked hard, started that last sentence without I felt embarrassed, because that's, depending on who the PO is, let's just say. We all worked so hard, and it would be wise of you to join in and be more attentive, something like that, right?
Yes, depends a lot on the relationship you have with the person that's getting the feedback. If you have a closer relationship, it has a bigger impact if you are closer to the subject. If you involve yourself in the behavior that needs to be corrected. If not, if you don't have such a close relationship, then yes, it's better to stick to the second part of the impact.
Yeah, it's if the Scrum team is new, then you may want to just stick to the facts instead of getting personal. And then, but if you've worked together for 6 months, get to know each other really well, then you can get more into I feel.
Exactly. Yes. And it's not a problem to express how some behavior made you feel. It's perfectly normal, and it creates a solid relationship. So it's good.
If I could jump in real quick. So we're working a lot on when you're providing this kind of feedback, when you say something that applies to you, it's really hard for someone to argue about that because it's how I feel. If you say that, that you did something, maybe they didn't do that. If you say that the team feels, well, maybe some of the people on the team don't feel. But if you say I feel, it's hard to argue with your feelings because you're your feelings.
Exactly.
So I think that's what my takeaway is on that second sentence is stressing what you feel can be something that's really hard to argue with.
Exactly. When we are sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. But like Charles had mentioned, like we're all coming from the military world in the past, some longer than others. But it's all about being, descriptive to me means all about keeping the feelings out and pointing to what was done wrong. Is that not correct?
Not necessarily. No. We don't need to keep the feelings out, because the feelings are the ones that are driving our behaviors. So it's perfectly fine to explain how something is making you feel. It's okay. What the person decides to do with the feedback, it's their call. But it's okay to talk about yourself, what you noticed, how you feel about something, and not to throw everyone into the mix. And an example is to tell someone that colleague X said this or felt that. That's not okay. But if you are talking about yourself, that's perfectly fine. And it helps, especially if we want to work on the deeper levels of the pyramid, then it's important to have that personal touch, and the emotions need to be there. Okay. The second technique is the CEDAR technique. So this technique was developed by Anna Waldman. So she's a specialist in performance management skills. This one has 5 steps. So first you introduce the area of feedback, you explain the importance, the level of feedback, who is affected, and the outcome. The second, you describe the specific example. In the third step, you explore what's behind a certain behavior. In the fourth one, you decide what actions will be important. And in the fifth one, that's a very important step that's missing from a lot of the feedbacks we are giving, is the follow-up to support. So this is the feedback that in order to provide it, we will need a lot more time. This is more focused on having a conversation than just sharing what you noticed and your corrective actions. To give you an example, you can say to a team that has not met their sprint goal that at the sprint planning you lied about the forecasted work, and that made us not meet our sprint goal and showed you lacked courage to estimate correctly. I'm very disappointed. So in this case, saying that you are very disappointed after that sentence doesn't work. It only makes the things worse. But then the same message can be conveyed in a different format. So you have the context. Once again, we have overcommitted and haven't met our sprint goal. I know you've been working on your estimating skills. Do you think that is the problem or something else? So you open the conversation. Then you go to the examples. You explain the person. I noticed that during refinements, you only spend 10 minutes on estimating. When someone starts to speak, you always speak over them and they stop contributing. So you give clear examples of the behavior. And then you go down in the pyramid to the environment and try to understand if the person, how the environment is looking like, why this is happening, what else might be happening, what is driving that behavior. And then together with the person, you establish the action and then a follow-up plan.
So real quickly, Anca, so what's the difference between I'm very disappointed versus I'm embarrassed?
No, the difference is the first part of the sentence. So
okay, so if you would have moved the I'm very disappointed in the front, would that have worked okay?
No, it doesn't make any difference, because over here you are telling the person that they lied, and maybe they haven't. This is just your assumption.
Okay.
Because no, they haven't met their sprint goal. you show that, you tell them that they lacked courage to estimate correctly.
Okay, so you're making assumptions with those few things in
Yes.
the beginning of the sentence.
Yes. So
there's nothing wrong with I'm very disappointed. It's just that you've thrown
exactly
some assumptions in the sentence.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
got it.
So you need to, only by using, if you want to use I'm very disappointed, you need to explain why. So it's not enough just to tell someone that you are disappointed. You need to explain the behavior that made you feel disappointed.
Right.
And in here, we are not explaining the behavior.
Anca, quick time check, 4 minutes.
Yes. And then we have the last technique. So the core technique, where feedback is specific, concrete, and functional. So we explain the context. When something happened, we state our observations, we describe the results, and we state our expectations. So the difference between the core technique and the situation impact behavior are the expectations. So in the situation impact behavior, in the impact, we don't really express our expectations, but only the things that we feel might need to be corrected, but not also how they need to be corrected. With this technique, we are also stating our expectations. So we would appreciate if moving forward, you could put your phone aside and focus on the conversation. So these are the 3 techniques. If you will search online, there are a lot more. So I selected these 3 because these are the ones that are extremely easy to use in your feedback conversations. But you can try as many as you want and see what works in your case. It might happen that for some people some work and for others other techniques. So you need to play with them and see how it goes. What I also mentioned in the beginning is the importance of trust. So the distinction between being able to tell the truth as you see it and saying nothing is the quality of your relationship. I think you also mentioned that in the beginning about how important it is to trust the person that is providing you feedback. So if you want to give feedback, you need to make sure that the person knows that you have his back, that the person trusts you, and the person knows that you accept him or just as he is. So trust is an important thing when providing feedback, and it's something that we need to build before being able to use any of the techniques. So if trust is not there, no technique will work. I had a small exercise, but I don't think we will have time for it. I will share with you after the slides, and maybe you can give it a try. So we have 2 scenarios, and the idea is to establish what value is broken and to formulate feedback using the Dield's pyramid and one of the techniques lab. And now do we have time for questions?
Yeah, some of us have to drop off, but Anca, if you have time and other people have time, maybe Jenny, you could make Anca the moderator. So I want to be respectful of your time, Anca. Before I drop off, I'm heading off to the Pathfinders sprint review. I'm so grateful. I learned so much. I think, Anca, you have enough meat here for like a 1-day workshop. So I would love to learn more from you offline. And my ask of people who attended is, I posted a message on LinkedIn. If you found this useful, I would love for you to respond on that thread and share at least one thing you learned and how you might apply it to constructively provide and receive feedback. So Anca, I've got to run. Thank you so much. And I hope to learn more from you in the future. All right. See you soon.
Thank you.
I made you the co-host, Anca, and this was fantastic. I mean, I think this is something we can use in our careers and our personal relationships.